A struggling mother was humiliated and thrown out of a grocery store for not having enough money to pay for basic groceries. 24 hours later, 3 black SUVs pulled up to that same store and an elderly woman stepped out with a briefcase. That would change everything forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning fog hung thick over Riverside, Oregon, casting a gray veil over the quiet streets of this working-class town. Amanda Rodriguez pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders as she hurried down Pine Street, her sneakers splashing through puddles left by the overnight rain. In her hand, she clutched a crumpled shopping list and a small envelope containing what she hoped would be enough cash to feed her children for the next few days. Amanda had been up since 4 in the morning, finishing her shift at Murphy's Diner. On the other side of town, the breakfast rush had been particularly brutal, with demanding customers and barely enough tips to make the early wake-up call worthwhile. But she couldn't afford to complain. Every dollar mattered when you were raising 2 young children on your own, juggling multiple jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. At 28, Amanda had never imagined her life would look like this. She had dreams once, plans for college, aspirations of becoming a teacher, but life had other ideas. When Tommy was born 8 years ago, those dreams got pushed aside for the more immediate concern of survival. Then Sophia came along 3 years later, and any remaining hope of pursuing her education vanished entirely. Now her world revolved around work schedules, daycare pickups, and the constant worry about making ends meet. The Fresh Mart supermarket loomed ahead, its bright fluorescent lights cutting through the morning gloom. Amanda had been shopping here for years, not because she particularly liked the store, but because it was within walking distance of her apartment in the Maple Grove neighborhood. The store had a reputation for being strict about their policies, particularly when it came to payment methods and customer behavior. There were signs everywhere reminding shoppers of the rules, from the maximum number of items allowed in express lanes to warnings about unattended children. As Amanda pushed through the automatic doors, the familiar smell of industrial cleaning products mixed with fresh produce hit her nostrils. The store was busier than usual for a Tuesday morning, with several elderly customers moving slowly through the aisles and a few other working parents like herself trying to grab necessities before heading to their next job. Amanda grabbed a shopping cart, its wheels squeaking as she maneuvered toward the produce section. She had exactly $43 in cash, money she had scraped together from tips and a small babysitting job she had picked up over the weekend. Tommy and Sophia had both been fighting colds for the past week, and she needed to buy ingredients for soup, along with some basic groceries to get them through until her next paycheck. She moved methodically through the store, checking prices twice before placing anything in her cart. A bag of carrots, $2.49. A whole chicken, $6.99. A loaf of bread, $1.75. Every purchase was calculated, weighed against necessity and her dwindling budget. In the medicine aisle, Amanda hesitated in front of the children's cold medicine. The name-brand version was $8, money she simply didn't have. The generic brand was $3 cheaper, but even that felt like a luxury when she was counting every penny. She picked up the generic bottle, read the label carefully, and placed it in her cart. Her children's health was worth more than her financial anxiety. As she shopped, Amanda noticed an elderly woman moving slowly through the aisles nearby. The woman appeared to be in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in a simple bun and wearing a faded blue cardigan that had seen better days. She pushed her cart with deliberate care, examining prices just as carefully as Amanda was doing. There was something dignified about the woman, despite her obviously modest circumstances. The way she held herself with quiet pride, even while clearly watching every dollar. The elderly woman caught Amanda's eye once and offered a small, understanding smile. It was the kind of look that passed between people who knew what it meant to stretch every dollar, to make impossible choices between necessities. Amanda smiled back, feeling a momentary connection with this stranger who seemed to understand her struggle without words. Amanda continued her shopping, adding a small bag of rice, some canned beans, and a gallon of milk to her cart. She avoided the snack aisles entirely, knowing that Tommy and Sophia would ask for treats she couldn't afford. It was one of the hardest parts of being a struggling parent, having to say no to simple pleasures that other families took for granted. At the meat counter, she asked for the cheapest ground beef available, even though she knew it would be mostly fat. The butcher, a kind-faced man named Carl who had worked at Freshmart for decades, gave her an extra-large portion without charging for the additional weight. It was a small kindness that Amanda appreciated more than he would ever know. Her cart was getting fuller, but so was her anxiety. Amanda did quick mental math as she walked, trying to estimate her total. $43 had seemed like enough when she made her list at home, but now, seeing the actual prices, she was starting to worry. Everything seemed more expensive than she remembered, from the produce to the dairy products. The elderly woman appeared in the same aisle again, this time examining a display of marked-down vegetables. Amanda watched as the woman selected the bruised apples and slightly wilted lettuce, the items that other customers had passed over. It reminded Amanda of her own strategy, shopping for the discounted items that were still perfectly edible, but just past their prime. There was something about the woman that intrigued Amanda. Despite her obvious financial constraints, she carried herself with a quiet grace. Her clothes were old, but clean and well-maintained. Her silver hair was neatly styled, and there was an intelligence in her eyes that spoke of a rich inner life. Amanda found herself wondering about the woman's story. What circumstances had led her to count pennies in a grocery store? As Amanda reached the final items on her list, she began to feel more confident about her budget. She had been careful, strategic in her choices, and it looked like she might actually have a few dollars left over. Maybe she could even afford a small treat for Tommy and Sophia, something to brighten their day while they recovered from their colds. She made her way toward the checkout lanes, choosing the one with the shortest line. The cashier was Michelle Park, a young woman who had been working at Freshmart since high school. Michelle had always been friendly to Amanda, often asking about the children and remembering their names from previous visits. Amanda began unloading her cart onto the conveyor belt, organizing her items carefully: the chicken, the vegetables, the medicine for the kids, the loaf of bread. Each item represented a small victory in her daily battle to provide for her family. She had been smart, resourceful, and careful with her money. Michelle began scanning the items, her fingers moving quickly across the register keys. Amanda watched the digital display, keeping a running tally in her head. $21, $28, $35. The numbers were climbing, but still within her budget. Then Michelle scanned the children's medicine, and Amanda's heart began to race. $39.47. She still had the milk and bread to go, along with the bag of rice. Amanda reached into her pocket, feeling for the crumpled bills she had counted so carefully that morning. $44.79, Michelle announced as she finished scanning the last item. Amanda's stomach dropped. She pulled out her money, counting the bills twice. $43. She was short by $1.79. Such a small amount, but it might as well have been $100 for all the good it did her. "I'm sorry," Amanda said quietly, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I think I might be a little short. Could you remove the bread?" Michelle's expression softened with sympathy. "Of course. Let me take that off for you." Amanda felt the familiar sting of shame that came with these moments. It wasn't the first time she'd been short at the checkout, and she knew it wouldn't be the last, but knowing that didn't make it any easier to bear. She was aware of the other customers in line behind her, probably growing impatient with the delay. "That brings it to $42.99, Michelle said gently. "Still too much." Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, trying to decide what else to remove from her purchase. The rice was essential for stretching meals throughout the week. The milk was necessary for the children. Everything in her cart served a purpose, filled a need that couldn't be ignored. "The rice too, please," she whispered. As Michelle removed the items, Amanda felt like she was shrinking into herself. This was the reality of her life, having to choose between a loaf of bread and a bag of rice, between her children's medicine and basic nutrition. The elderly woman who had been shopping near her was now 2 people behind her in line, and Amanda could feel her sympathetic gaze. 39. 47, Michelle announced. Amanda handed over her money, counting out the exact amount. Michelle bagged her remaining groceries with extra care, as if trying to make up for the items that had to be left behind. Amanda managed a weak smile of thanks, grabbed her single bag of groceries, and turned to leave. That's when Derek Williams, the store manager, appeared beside the checkout lane. Derek was a man in his early 40s who took the store's policies very seriously. He had been watching the transaction from his office, and Amanda could see the disapproval in his expression. "Ma'am," Derek said, his voice carrying across the checkout area, "I need to speak with you for a moment." Amanda stopped, her heart a pounding. She had done nothing wrong, had followed all the store's rules, had paid for her groceries with exact change. But something in Derek's tone made her nervous. "I've been watching this situation," Derek continued, his voice getting louder, "and I think we need to establish some boundaries here." Other customers were now staring openly. The elderly woman looked concerned, and Michelle appeared uncomfortable behind the register. Amanda felt exposed, vulnerable, like a specimen under a microscope. "I don't understand," Amanda said quietly. "I paid for everything in my cart." "After holding up the line and making a scene," Derek replied. "Ma'am, this isn't the first time you've come in here and been unable to pay for your groceries. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We're running a business here, not a charity. If you can't afford to shop here, maybe you should consider other options." The words hit Amanda like physical blows. She was aware of every eye in the store turned toward her, of the whispered conversations starting among other customers. Her face burned with humiliation as Derek continued his public shaming. "We have other customers to serve," Derek said, his voice carrying throughout the front of the store. "People who can actually afford to pay for their groceries without drama. I'm going to have to ask you to take your business elsewhere." Amanda stood frozen, clutching her single bag of groceries. The injustice of the situation overwhelmed her. She had paid for everything in her cart. She had been polite, quiet, and respectful. Her only crime was being poor, being a mother trying to stretch every dollar to feed her children. "You're asking me to leave?" Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm telling you to leave," Derek said firmly, "and I don't want to see you back in here causing disruptions. Find somewhere else to shop." The elderly woman in line stepped forward, her face flushed with indignation. "Excuse me, young man, but this woman has done nothing wrong. She paid for her groceries." Derek turned his attention to the elderly woman, his expression dismissive. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please mind your own business." But the woman wasn't backing down. Despite her modest appearance, there was steel in her voice when she spoke. "I've been shopping in grocery stores for 70 years. And I've never seen such cruel treatment of a customer. This young mother is trying to feed her children, and you're humiliating her for what? For being careful with her money." Like I said, ma'am, this is none of your concern, Derek replied, his tone growing more aggressive. If you don't like how we run things here, you're welcome to shop elsewhere too. Amanda looked at the elderly woman with gratitude, amazed that a stranger would stand up for her. But she couldn't bear to have this kind woman drawn into her shame. She needed to leave, to escape the stares and whispers, to get home to her children who were waiting for her. It's okay, Amanda said to the elderly woman. Thank you, but it's okay, I'll just go. She turned and walked toward the exit, her legs feeling unsteady beneath her. Behind her, she could hear Derek addressing the other customers, probably spinning the story to make himself look reasonable and her look like a troublemaker. The automatic doors slid open, and Amanda stepped out into the grey Oregon morning, feeling smaller and more defeated than she had in years. As she walked home through the quiet streets of Riverside, Amanda replayed the scene over and over in her mind. The public humiliation, the stares from other customers, Derek's cruel words, echoing in her ears. She had been shopping at Freshmart for years, had never caused any trouble, had always been respectful and polite, but none of that mattered when you were poor, when you didn't have the luxury of financial security. Back inside the store, the elderly woman named Helen Carter was still standing in line, but her mind was racing. She had witnessed something that stirred a deep anger within her, a reminder of why she had spent her entire career fighting against exactly this kind of treatment. The young mother's dignity, her quiet strength in the face of such public cruelty, had touched something in Helen's heart. As Helen paid for her own modest groceries, she made a decision that would change everything. Some battles were worth fighting, and some injustices demanded more than just words of support. She had spent decades building something powerful, something that could make a real difference in situations exactly like this. Derek Williams had no idea that the elderly woman he had just dismissed so rudely was about to turn his world completely upside down. Amanda Rodriguez walked home, thinking her story with Freshmart was over, that she had been permanently exiled from the only grocery store within walking distance of her home. Neither of them could have imagined what the next 24 hours would bring. Amanda's apartment felt smaller than usual when she finally made it home. The single bag of groceries sat on her kitchen counter like a monument to her failure, a physical reminder of the humiliation she had just endured. She stared at the meager contents, trying to figure out how to make them stretch until her next paycheck arrived on Friday. 3 days might as well have been 3 weeks when you were counting every meal. The apartment itself was a testament to Amanda's resourcefulness and determination. Despite the peeling paint and the radiator that clanked through the night, she had managed to make it feel like home. Colorful drawings from Tommy and Sophia covered the refrigerator, and second-hand furniture arranged with care created cozy spaces for her children to play and learn. Books from the library were stacked on every available surface, evidence of Amanda's commitment to her children's education despite their financial struggles. Sophia was curled up on the couch under a worn quilt, her small face flushed with fever. At 5 years old, she had inherited her mother's dark eyes and stubborn streak, but today she looked fragile and tired. Tommy sat beside his sister, reading to her from one of their library books, his 8-year-old voice carefully sounding out words he wasn't sure about. He had appointed himself Sophia's protector, a role he took seriously despite his young age. "Mama's home," Tommy announced when he heard Amanda's key in the lock. His face lit up with anticipation. "Did you get the soup stuff and maybe some crackers?" Amanda's heart clenched as she looked at her son's hopeful expression. Tommy had been asking for crackers for days, a simple request that most parents could fulfill without thought. But for Amanda, even saltine crackers represented a luxury she couldn't afford this week. "I got some good things for soup," Amanda said, forcing brightness into her voice. "We'll have you both feeling better in no time." She unpacked the groceries slowly, making each item seem more substantial than it was. The chicken would make a pot of soup that could last for days if she added enough water and vegetables. The carrots and onions would provide flavor and nutrition. The medicine would help with Sophia's fever, even if it wasn't the name brand the pediatrician had recommended. As Amanda began preparing the soup, her mind kept drifting back to the scene at Freshmart. Derek Williams's voice echoed in her thoughts, his cruel words replaying like a broken record. "We're running a business here, not a charity." The phrase stung because it reduced her to nothing more than an inconvenience, a problem to be eliminated, rather than a person deserving of basic dignity. Tommy appeared at her elbow, watching as she chopped vegetables with practiced efficiency. "Mama, why do you look sad? Are you worried about Sophia?" Amanda paused in her chopping, looking down at her perceptive son. Tommy had always been sensitive to her moods, picking up on tension and worry that she tried to hide. It was one of the burdens of being a single parent, knowing that your children absorbed your stress, whether you wanted them to or not. "I'm just tired, sweetheart," Amanda said, ruffling his dark hair. "And yes, I'm worried about Sophia, but she's going to be fine. Sometimes grown-ups have difficult days, just like kids do." Tommy nodded solemnly, accepting her explanation but not entirely convinced. He had heard enough conversations between Amanda and her mother to understand that money was always a concern, that his mama worked harder than any person should have to work. He had noticed the way she counted coins before going to the store, the way she studied sale flyers with intense concentration. "Can I help with the soup?" Tommy asked. "I know how to stir without splashing." Amanda smiled genuinely for the first time since leaving the grocery store. Her children were her anchors, the reason she kept fighting when everything else felt impossible. Tommy's eagerness to help, Sophia's sweet smile even when she felt terrible. These were the things that mattered more than Derek Williams' harsh words or the embarrassment of being asked to leave a store. They worked together in the small kitchen, Tommy standing on a step stool to reach the counter, while Amanda guided his hands as he stirred the pot. The simple act of cooking together, of creating something nourishing from basic ingredients, helped ease some of the tension in Amanda's shoulders. This was what she was good at, what she had always been good at, making the best of difficult situations, finding ways to care for her family even when resources were scarce. The soup began to fill the apartment with its warm, comforting aroma. Sophia perked up from the couch, her nose twitching as the smell reached her. "It smells like Grandma Carmen's soup," she said, her voice hoarse but pleased. Amanda's mother, Carmen Rodriguez, had taught her everything she knew about stretching ingredients and making meals that could feed a family for days. Carmen had raised 5 children on her husband's factory wages, and she had developed a repertoire of recipes that could transform simple ingredients into satisfying meals. Amanda had inherited not just the recipes, but the mindset that came with them. Waste nothing, appreciate everything, and never let pride prevent you from taking care of your family. As the soup simmered, Amanda called her mother from the old landline phone in the kitchen. Carmen lived across town in the house where Amanda had grown up, a modest 2-bedroom home that had somehow managed to accommodate a family of 7. Now at 62, Carmen worked part-time at a local seamstress shop, her fingers still nimble with needle and thread, despite decades of hard labor. "Mija," Carmen's voice was warm through the phone. "How are my grandbabies? Is Sophia feeling any better?" "A little," Amanda said, lowering her voice so the children wouldn't hear the strain in it. "Mama, something happened today at the grocery store." She told her mother about the incident with Derek Williams, about the public humiliation, and the demand that she shop elsewhere. Carmen listened in silence, her breathing growing heavier as Amanda described the scene. When Amanda finished, there was a long pause before Carmen spoke. "That man has no right to treat you that way," Carmen said, her voice tight with anger. "You are a good mother, Amanda. You work harder than anyone I know, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. I know, Mama, but it still hurts. And now I don't know where I'm going to shop. Freshmart is the only place I can walk to, and the bus fare to other stores. We'll figure it out, Carmen said firmly. Your children will not go hungry. I have some money saved, and if you need help. No, Mama. Amanda's response was immediate and firm. You need that money for your own expenses. I'll find another way. Carmen Rodriguez had sacrificed enough for her children over the years. Amanda was determined not to become a burden to her mother, even though she knew Carmen would give her last dollar to help. It was a matter of pride, but also of love. Amanda wanted to prove that she could take care of her own family, that the struggles of her childhood wouldn't define her children's future. After ending the call with her mother, Amanda sat at her small kitchen table and tried to make sense of her situation. Freshmart had been convenient, but it wasn't the only option. There was a larger supermarket about 2 miles away, accessible by bus if she could afford the fare. There was also a small corner market in her neighborhood, though their prices were higher and their selection limited. The more immediate problem was the humiliation itself, the way Derek Williams had made her feel like she was somehow less deserving of basic respect because of her financial situation. Amanda had worked in customer service herself, first at a department store during high school and later at various restaurants and cafes. She understood the challenges of dealing with difficult customers, but she also understood the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Tommy appeared beside her chair, his small hand touching her arm. Mama, is the soup ready? Sophia says her tummy feels empty. Amanda checked the pot, tasting the broth and adjusting the seasoning. The soup was simple but nourishing, exactly what her children needed. She ladled it into mismatched bowls, adding crackers that she had saved from a restaurant where she had worked a catering event the week before. As they ate together on the couch, Sophia cuddled against Amanda's side and Tommy chattering about his day at school, Amanda felt some of her earlier despair begin to lift. This was what mattered, this simple moment of family togetherness. Derek Williams might have the power to embarrass her in his store, but he couldn't touch this, couldn't diminish the love that filled their small apartment. That evening, after the children were settled in bed, Amanda sat at her kitchen table with a notebook and calculator, trying to work out a new budget that would accommodate shopping at a different store. The numbers were challenging, requiring adjustments that would affect every aspect of their weekly routine. Bus fare to the larger supermarket would eat into her grocery budget. Walking to the corner market would save transportation costs but result in higher prices for food. She was deep in calculations when the phone rang. Lisa Thompson's voice was cheerful as always, a bright spot in Amanda's difficult day. Lisa had been Amanda's closest friend since high school, one of the few people who had stuck around when Amanda's life took its unexpected turns. While Lisa had gone on to college and a stable career as a dental hygienist, she had never made Amanda feel judged for the different path her life had taken. "Hey girl," Lisa said. "I was just calling to see how the kids are feeling. Any better today?" Amanda filled Lisa in on Sophia's fever and Tommy's protective hovering, then found herself recounting the incident at Freshmart. Lisa's response was immediate and fierce. "That manager is a complete jerk," Lisa said without hesitation. "Amanda, you have every right to shop there. You paid for your groceries. You were polite. You didn't cause any problems. What he did was completely out of line." "I know," Amanda said quietly, "but knowing something and feeling it are two different things. I felt so small, Lisa, like everyone in that store was looking at me and judging me." "Listen to me," Lisa's voice was firm. "You're one of the strongest, most resourceful people I know. You're raising 2 amazing kids on your own. You're working multiple jobs. You're doing everything right. Don't let one ignorant man make you feel bad about yourself." Lisa's words were exactly what Amanda needed to hear. Sometimes it took an outside perspective to remind you of your own worth, especially when life had a way of wearing down your confidence one small defeat at a time. They talked for another half hour, Lisa sharing funny stories from her work and asking about Amanda's plans for the weekend. The normalcy of the conversation, the easy back and forth of long-time friendship, helped restore some of Amanda's equilibrium. When she finally hung up the phone, she felt more like herself again. The next morning dawned grey and drizzly, typical weather for Riverside in early autumn. Amanda woke early as always, her internal clock trained by years of multiple jobs and childcare responsibilities. Sophia's fever had broken during the night, and she was sitting up in bed asking for breakfast, a good sign that she was on the mend. Amanda made oatmeal with the last of her milk, stretching it with water and adding cinnamon to make it more appealing. Tommy and Sophia ate without complaint, accustomed to simple breakfasts and grateful for anything warm and filling. Amanda saved a small portion for herself, eating quickly while she got the children ready for the day. Mrs. Patterson from next door had agreed to watch Sophia while Tommy was at school, and Amanda worked her morning shift at the diner. Mrs. Patterson was a widow in her 70s who seemed to genuinely enjoy having children around. She refused to accept payment for babysitting, saying that Sophia's company was worth more than money. It was another small kindness that made Amanda's complicated life a little more manageable. The walk to Murphy's Diner took Amanda through the heart of downtown Riverside, past small businesses that had been struggling for years, and empty storefronts that spoke to the town's economic challenges. Amanda had grown up here, had watched the gradual decline as manufacturing jobs disappeared and young people moved away to find opportunities in larger cities. Murphy's Diner was a throwback to an earlier era, with red vinyl booths and a lunch counter that had served the same coffee for 30 years. The owner, Frank Murphy, was a gruff man in his 60s who had inherited the business from his father. Frank wasn't particularly warm or friendly, but he was fair in his dealings with employees and didn't ask too many questions about their personal lives. Amanda's morning shift at the diner was usually quiet, serving coffee and breakfast to a regular crowd of retirees and shift workers. The work was familiar and routine, requiring little mental energy but demanding physical stamina. She moved efficiently between tables, pouring coffee and taking orders, her mind often occupied with planning and problem-solving related to her children's needs. During her break, Amanda sat in the back alley behind the diner, eating a piece of toast that Frank let her take from the kitchen. The morning's tips had been decent, enough to cover bus fare to the larger supermarket if she needed to shop somewhere other than the corner market. She was calculating her options when her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Helen Carter. We met yesterday at Fresh Mart. I hope you don't mind, but I got your number from the phone book. I would very much like to speak with you. Could we meet for coffee this afternoon?" Amanda stared at the message, trying to place the name. Helen Carter. Then she remembered the elderly woman who had stood up for her in the grocery store, who had challenged Derek Williams's treatment with such dignity and strength. Amanda was touched that the woman had reached out, but also puzzled about what she could want to discuss. She texted back, "Thank you for standing up for me yesterday. I get off work at 2 p.m. There's a small cafe called Rosie's on Main Street. If that works for you." The response came quickly. "Perfect. I'll see you at 2:30. And Amanda, please don't worry about the cost of coffee. This is my invitation." Amanda spent the rest of her shift wondering about Helen Carter and what she might want to discuss. The woman had seemed genuinely upset about the treatment Amanda had received, but surely that couldn't be reason enough to seek out a meeting with a complete stranger. Maybe she was involved with some kind of community organization, or perhaps she simply wanted to make sure Amanda was all right after such a difficult experience. When 2 o'clock arrived, Amanda clocked out and walked the 3 blocks to Rosie's cafe. The small restaurant was nearly empty in the mid-afternoon lull. Just a couple of students with laptops and an elderly man reading a newspaper. Amanda chose a table near the window and waited, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she had reluctantly ordered. Helen Carter arrived precisely at 2:30, and Amanda was struck again by the woman's quiet dignity. She moved with purpose. Despite her age, her silver hair neatly arranged and her clothing simple but well-maintained. There was something about her presence that commanded respect, a quality that Amanda hadn't fully appreciated during their brief encounter at the grocery store. "Amanda," Helen said warmly as she approached the table. "Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. I hope I'm not imposing." "Not at all," Amanda replied, standing to shake Helen's hand. "I wanted to thank you again for what you did yesterday. You didn't have to get involved, but I really appreciated your support." Helen settled into the chair across from Amanda, studying her with intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than most people. "What happened to you yesterday was inexcusable," she said without preamble. "I've been thinking about it ever since, and I realized I couldn't just walk away and pretend it didn't happen." Amanda felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. "It wasn't that big a deal, really. I mean, it was humiliating, but it's not like it's the end of the world. I'll just shop somewhere else." "It is a big deal," Helen said firmly. "Amanda, may I ask you something personal? What do you do for work?" "I work at Murphy's Diner in the mornings, and I clean houses in the evenings. Sometimes I pick up catering jobs on weekends." Amanda wasn't sure why she was sharing these details with a stranger, but something about Helen's manner invited honesty. "And you have children?" "2. Tommy is 8 and Sophia is 5. Sophia's been sick with a cold, which is why I was buying medicine yesterday." Amanda found herself explaining more than she had intended, drawn by Helen's genuine interest and non-judgmental demeanor. Helen nodded thoughtfully. "You're working multiple jobs to support your family. You're clearly a devoted mother, and you were treated like a criminal for being careful with your money. That's not acceptable, Amanda. That's not the kind of world I want to live in." There was something in Helen's tone that made Amanda look at her more carefully. Despite her modest appearance, there was an authority in her voice, a confidence that suggested she was accustomed to being heard and respected. Amanda began to wonder if there was more to Helen Carter than met the eye. "I appreciate your concern," Amanda said carefully, "but I'm not sure what can be done about it. Derek Williams is the manager, and he has the right to decide who shops in his store." Helen's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger or perhaps determination. "Amanda, what if I told you that there might be ways to address what happened? That people like Derek Williams shouldn't be allowed to treat customers the way he treated you?" Amanda felt a flutter of unease. She wasn't looking for conflict or confrontation. She just wanted to take care of her children and move on with her life. "I don't want to cause any trouble," she said quickly. "I just want to put it behind me." "Sometimes," Helen said gently, "the best way to put something behind you is to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." As they sat in the quiet cafe, Amanda had no idea that she was speaking with one of the most powerful women in retail, someone who had built an empire from nothing and who had the resources to transform not just Fresh Mart, but the entire way. Business was conducted in their small town. Helen Carter was studying Amanda with the same intensity she had once brought to corporate boardrooms, seeing in this young mother something worth fighting for. The conversation was about to take a turn that would change everything Amanda thought she knew about her own life and the possibilities that lay ahead of her. Helen Carter sat back in her chair at Rosie's cafe, her weathered hands wrapped around her coffee cup as she studied Amanda with the intensity of someone making a crucial decision. The afternoon light filtering through the window cast gentle shadows across her face, but there was nothing gentle about the determination in her eyes. Amanda, Helen began, her voice taking on a different quality, more authoritative than before. I need to tell you something about myself, something that might help you understand why yesterday's incident affected me so deeply. Amanda shifted, uncomfortably in her seat. There was something in Helen's tone that suggested this conversation was about to become much more serious than a simple discussion between two women who had witnessed an unfortunate event at a grocery store. 73 years ago, Helen continued, I was born in a town not unlike this one. My parents were immigrants who worked in the textile mills, and we lived in a company house that barely had running water. I know what it feels like to count every penny, to choose between necessities, to be looked down upon because of your circumstances. Amanda found herself leaning forward, drawn into Helen's story, despite her earlier discomfort. There was something compelling about the older woman's voice, a quality that commanded attention and respect. When I was 16, Helen went on, I was shopping for groceries with the little money my mother had given me. The store owner, a man named Mr. Garrett, accused me of stealing because I was taking too long to count my change. He made me empty my pockets in front of the other customers, humiliated me the same way Derek Williams humiliated you yesterday. The parallel was unmistakable, and Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. What did you do? Helen's smile was slight but meaningful. I promised myself that day that I would never again be powerless in the face of such treatment. I worked 3 jobs through high school, saved every penny I could, and put myself through business school. It took me 15 years, but I eventually bought that store. Mr. Garrett found himself looking for new employment. Amanda's eyes widened. There was something in the way Helen told this story, with such quiet confidence and specific detail, that made it clear she wasn't speaking hypothetically. You really did that? You bought the store just because of how he treated you? That was just the beginning, Helen said, her voice growing stronger. I discovered that I had a talent for understanding what customers really wanted, for creating shopping experiences that treated people with dignity regardless of their economic status. 1 store became 2, then 5, then 20. The pieces were starting to come together in Amanda's mind, but the picture they were forming seemed impossible. Helen Carter looked like any other elderly woman on a fixed income, carefully shopping for bargains and counting her change. But the authority in her voice, the specific way she spoke about business and customer service, suggested something entirely different. Amanda, Helen said, leaning forward across the small table, my name is Helen Carter, and I am the founder and majority owner of Carter Retail Enterprises. We operate over 800 grocery stores across the Pacific Northwest, including the parent company that owns the Fresh Mart chain. The words hit Amanda like a physical blow. She stared at Helen, trying to reconcile this revelation with the modest woman who had been shopping for marked-down vegetables just 24 hours earlier. Carter Retail Enterprises was a name Amanda recognized from news stories and business sections of newspapers. It was one of the largest retail chains in the region, known for competitive prices and community involvement. That's impossible, Amanda whispered. You were shopping for bargains yesterday. You were looking at the same marked-down produce. I was. Helen's expression softened with something that might have been sadness. Amanda, wealth doesn't mean you forget where you came from. I shop in my stores regularly, often in modest clothing, and without any identification that would reveal who I am. It's the only way to understand what the real shopping experience is like for ordinary customers. Amanda's mind raced as she tried to process this information. If Helen Carter really was who she claimed to be, then yesterday's incident at Fresh Mart took on an entirely different significance. The woman who had witnessed Derek Williams's cruel treatment wasn't just a sympathetic stranger, she was someone with the power to do something meaningful about it. You own Fresh Mart? Amanda asked, her voice barely audible. I own the company that owns Freshmart, Helen clarified, along with 47 other stores in this region. And Amanda, what I witnessed yesterday violates every principle my company is supposed to stand for. Helen reached into her modest handbag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table to Amanda. The card was simple but elegant, featuring the Carter Retail Enterprises logo and Helen's name with the title Founder and CEO. Amanda picked it up with trembling fingers, the reality of the situation finally beginning to sink in. I don't understand, Amanda said. If you own all these stores, why were you shopping like someone who has to worry about money? Because I do worry about money, Helen replied firmly. Not my own, but the money of every customer who walks into my stores. I worry about single mothers like you who are working multiple jobs just to put food on the table. I worry about elderly people on fixed incomes who have to choose between medication and groceries. I worry about families who are one unexpected expense away from disaster. Helen's voice carried a passion that made Amanda understand this wasn't just business for her. It was personal. Every month I visit different stores unannounced, dressed like any other customer. I watch how my employees treat people. I observe the shopping experience from the customer's perspective, and I make sure my stores are living up to the values I established when I started this company. And what you saw yesterday? What I saw yesterday was a complete betrayal of everything I've worked to build, Helen said, her voice hardening. Derek Williams treated you like you were less than human because you were being careful with your money. He humiliated you in front of other customers, made you feel ashamed for being a responsible parent trying to feed her children. That is not acceptable in any store that carries my name. Amanda felt overwhelmed by the implications of what Helen was telling her. The incident that had left her feeling powerless and humiliated suddenly seemed much larger, part of a pattern that someone with real authority was prepared to address. What are you going to do? Amanda asked. Helen's smile was sharp and determined. I'm going to remind Mr. Williams and everyone else in that store what customer service really means. But first, I want to make sure you understand something important. Helen leaned forward, her eyes intense and focused. Amanda, what happened to you yesterday wasn't your fault. You did nothing wrong. You were a customer trying to purchase groceries for your family, and you were treated with cruelty and disrespect. No one should have to endure that kind of treatment, regardless of their financial situation. Tears welled up in Amanda's eyes as she heard these words. Since leaving Freshmart the day before, she'd been carrying a burden of shame and self-doubt, wondering if there was something she could have done differently, some way she could have avoided the humiliation. Helen's words were like a weight being lifted from her shoulders. I've been thinking about this all night, Amanda admitted, wondering if I should have had more money ready, or if I should have checked my math more carefully before going to the store. Stop, Helen said, firmly. You did exactly what any responsible person would do. You shopped carefully, you stayed within your budget, and when you were slightly short, you made reasonable adjustments. The problem wasn't your behavior, Amanda. The problem was Derek Williams's complete lack of compassion and professionalism. Helen pulled out her phone, a sleek device that seemed at odds with her modest appearance. I've already been in contact with the regional manager for Freshmart. There's going to be a meeting at the store tomorrow morning, and I want you to be there. Amanda felt a surge of panic. Oh no, I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I just want to move on and forget about it. Amanda, Helen's voice was gentle but insistent. This isn't about getting someone in trouble. This is about making sure that other customers don't have to go through what you experienced. Derek Williams needs to understand that his behavior was unacceptable, and the staff at that store needs training on how to treat customers with dignity. Helen continued, her tone becoming more businesslike. But beyond that, I want to discuss something much more important with you. Something that could change not just your shopping experience, but your entire life. Amanda felt her heart rate. Accelerate. The conversation had already taken so many unexpected turns that she wasn't sure she could handle another surprise. What do you mean? I've been looking for someone to help me with a special project, Helen explained. For years, I've wanted to create a different kind of grocery store, one that specifically serves families and individuals who are struggling financially. Not a charity, but a business model that makes healthy food accessible to everyone regardless of their economic situation. Helen's eyes lit up as she described her vision. Imagine a store where customers could buy groceries on a payment plan, where fresh produce was always affordable, where no one would ever be turned away or humiliated because they were short a few dollars. A place where shopping for food was a dignified experience for everyone. Amanda listened with growing amazement. The idea Helen was describing sounded almost too good to be true, like something from a dream rather than a realistic business proposal. I've had the concept for this store worked out for months, Helen continued. I have the financial backing, the location scouted, and the operational plan developed. What I've been missing is the right person to manage it, someone who understands the challenges faced by the customers we want to serve. The implication of Helen's words slowly dawned on Amanda. You're talking about me? I'm talking about you, Helen confirmed. Amanda, you have something that can't be taught in business school. You have empathy, integrity, and real understanding of what it means to struggle. You know what it feels like to count every dollar, to make impossible choices between necessities. That perspective is invaluable. Amanda felt dizzy with the enormity of what Helen was suggesting. But I don't know anything about running a store. I've never managed anything bigger than a waitressing shift. I don't have business experience or education. Those things can be learned, Helen said dismissively. What can't be learned is character, and you demonstrated your character yesterday. When you maintained your dignity in the face of cruel treatment, you showed grace under pressure, and that's exactly what I need in a manager. Helen reached across the table and took Amanda's hands in her own. Amanda, I'm offering you the opportunity to manage a store that could serve hundreds of families just like yours. You would have the power to create the kind of shopping experience you wish you had yesterday, to ensure that no customer ever feels the way Derek Williams made you feel. The offer was so far beyond anything Amanda had ever imagined for herself that she struggled to find words. Managing a grocery store seemed like an impossible leap from her current jobs as a waitress and house cleaner. The responsibility seemed overwhelming, the potential for failure terrifying. I don't know if I could do it, Amanda said honestly. What if I mess up? What if I can't handle the pressure? Helen's smile was warm and encouraging. Amanda, you're already handling pressure that would break most people. You're raising 2 children on your own, working multiple jobs, managing a household budget that requires mathematical precision. You've been running a complex operation for years without realizing it. Helen pulled out a folder from her handbag, placing it on the table between them. This contains the business plan for the store I want to create. I'd like you to take it home, read through it, and think about what I'm proposing. Take your time, discuss it with people you trust, and then let me know what you decide. Amanda stared at the folder as if it might contain either her salvation or her doom. The weight of the decision ahead of her felt enormous, but there was also something exciting about the possibility Helen was offering. To go from being humiliated in a grocery store to managing one seemed like something that only happened in movies. There's something else you should know, Helen added. The salary I'm offering would be enough for you to quit your other jobs and focus entirely on this position. You'd have health insurance, paid vacation time, and a benefits package that would provide security for you and your children. The financial aspect of Helen's offer hit Amanda with fresh force. To work just one job, to have a regular schedule that would allow her to spend more time with Tommy and Sophia, to not have to worry constantly about making ends meet, seemed almost too wonderful to believe. "Why me?" Amanda asked. "Surely there are other people with experience, who would be better qualified." Helen's expression grew serious. "Amanda, I've been in business for over 50 years. I've hired hundreds of managers, worked with thousands of employees. Technical skills can be taught, but integrity and compassion are much rarer qualities. Yesterday, when Derek Williams was humiliating you, you maintained your dignity. You didn't argue, you didn't cause a scene, you simply gathered your groceries and left with your head held high." "Son," Helen continued, her voice growing more passionate, "that's the kind of strength I want in a manager, someone who can handle difficult situations with grace, who understands that every customer deserves respect, regardless of their circumstances. You've been tested in ways that most business school graduates never will be, and you've passed every test." Amanda felt tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of possibility rather than despair. For the first time in years, someone was seeing potential in her rather than just problems. Helen Carter wasn't offering her charity. She was offering her opportunity. "What would happen to Derek Williams?" Amanda asked, surprised by her own concern for the man who had treated her so poorly. Helen's expression hardened slightly. "Derek Williams will be dealt with appropriately. His behavior yesterday was unacceptable, and there will be consequences. But this isn't about revenge, Amanda. This is about creating something better, building the kind of business that serves the community, rather than exploiting it." As they sat in the quiet cafe, Amanda felt the trajectory of her life shifting in ways she couldn't have imagined just days before. The folder on the table represented more than just a job offer. It represented the possibility of transforming not just her own circumstances, but the circumstances of countless other families struggling to make ends meet. Helen stood to leave, her movement graceful despite her age. "Amanda, I want you to know that whatever you decide, I respect your choice. This is a big opportunity, but it's also a big responsibility. Take the time you need to think it through." Amanda picked up the folder, feeling its weight in her hands. "When do you need an answer?" "Take a week," Helen said. "But Amanda, remember this. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risk at all. You have the chance to change not just your own life, but the lives of everyone who shops in the store you would manage. That's not an opportunity that comes along very often." As Helen walked away, leaving Amanda alone with the business proposal and a decision that would define her future, Amanda realized that her life had just taken a turn she could never have anticipated. The woman she had thought was just another struggling customer had turned out to be one of the most powerful business leaders in the region, and she was offering Amanda a chance to join her in creating something revolutionary. The folder felt heavy in Amanda's hands as she walked home, not just with the weight of paper, but with the weight of possibility. Everything she had thought she knew about her limitations, her prospects, and her future was suddenly open to question. Helen Carter had seen something in her that Amanda wasn't sure she saw in herself, and now she had to decide whether she was brave enough to find out if Helen was right. Amanda clutched the business proposal folder against her chest as she walked through the quiet streets of Riverside, her mind spinning with everything Helen Carter had revealed. The ordinary sights of her neighborhood seemed different now, as if she was seeing them through new eyes. The corner market where she sometimes bought milk when she was desperate. The bus stop where she waited to get to her evening cleaning. Jobs, the small playground where Tommy and Sophia spent their afternoons, all looked the same, but Amanda felt like everything had fundamentally changed. When she reached her apartment building, Mrs. Patterson was waiting at her door with Sophia, who was looking much better after a day of rest and medicine. Tommy bounced excitedly beside them, eager to tell his mother about his day at school and ask about the soup leftovers he was hoping would be waiting for dinner. "Thank you so much for watching her," Amanda said to Mrs. Patterson, forcing herself to focus on the immediate needs of her children despite the chaos in her thoughts. "She was an angel," Mrs. Patterson replied, her kind eyes studying Amanda's. Faced with concern, "Are you feeling all right, dear? You look a bit overwhelmed." Amanda managed a smile, not wanting to worry the older woman who had been so generous with her time and care. "Just a long day at work, nothing that a quiet evening with the kids won't fix." After Mrs. Patterson left, Amanda heated up the remaining soup, while Tommy and Sophia chatted about their respective days. Sophia was feeling well enough to be animated about the picture book Mrs. Patterson had read to her, and Tommy was excited about a science project his teacher had assigned about weather patterns. Their normal everyday concerns felt both comforting and surreal, given the magnitude of the decision Amanda was facing. As they ate dinner together at their small kitchen table, Amanda found herself studying her children with new intensity. Tommy's serious expression as he explained cloud formations, Sophia's delighted giggle when she spilled soup on her shirt, the easy way they leaned against her as they ate. All of these moments took on additional significance when viewed through the lens of Helen's offer. If she took the position Helen was proposing, everything about their lives would change. They could afford a larger apartment, maybe even a small house with a yard where the children could play safely. Tommy could participate in school activities without Amanda worrying about the cost of supplies or transportation. Sophia could attend a better daycare, one that focused on learning and development, rather than just keeping children occupied while their parents worked. But with those possibilities came risks that made Amanda's stomach clench with anxiety. What if she failed at managing the store? What if her lack of formal business education became a serious liability? What if she made decisions that hurt the very customers she was trying to help? The thought of disappointing Helen Carter, who had shown such faith in her abilities, was almost as terrifying as the thought of remaining trapped in her current circumstances. After the children were settled with their homework and evening routines, Amanda finally opened the folder Helen had given her. The business plan was more comprehensive than anything she had ever seen, filled with detailed financial projections, operational procedures, and philosophical statements about customer service that made Amanda's heart race with excitement and fear in equal measure. The store Helen envisioned was unlike anything that currently existed in Riverside or the surrounding area. Customers would be able to establish credit accounts that allowed them to purchase groceries with manageable payment plans. Fresh produce would be subsidized to ensure that healthy food was accessible to families regardless of their income level. There would be cooking classes, nutrition education, and partnerships with local food banks to prevent waste and serve the most vulnerable members of the community. Reading through the proposal, Amanda began to understand that Helen wasn't just offering her a job, she was offering her the chance to become part of something revolutionary. This wasn't just about running a grocery store. It was about reimagining the entire relationship between businesses and the communities they served. The financial details of the position were outlined in clinical terms that made the opportunity feel both more real and more intimidating. The salary Helen was offering was more than Amanda currently made from all her jobs combined. There would be a comprehensive benefits package, including health insurance that would cover Tommy and Sophia, dental care, and even a retirement savings plan. For someone who had been living paycheck to paycheck for years, the idea of financial security felt almost abstract. But it was the job description itself that truly captured Amanda's imagination. As store manager, she would have the authority to implement policies that prioritized customer dignity and community service. She would oversee staff training that emphasized empathy and respect for all customers, She would have the power to ensure that no one would ever experience what she had endured at Derek Williams's hands. Amanda closed the folder and sat back, in her kitchen chair, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Outside her window, the familiar sounds of her neighborhood continued, the distant hum of traffic, children playing in nearby apartments, the occasional bark of a dog. This was the world she knew, the life she had built through sheer determination and endless hard work. Leaving it behind felt both liberating and terrifying. She picked up the phone and dialed Lisa's number, needing the grounding influence of her best friend's practical wisdom. "You will not believe what happened to me today," Amanda began when Lisa answered, and then proceeded to tell the entire story from the mysterious text message to Helen's stunning revelation to the job offer. That seemed too good to be true. Lisa listened in silence until Amanda finished, then let out a low whistle. "Amanda, do you realize what you're telling me? This woman is offering you the chance of a lifetime. This is like winning the lottery, except instead of luck, you earned it through your character and integrity." "But what if I can't do it?" Amanda's voice was small with doubt. "What if I'm not smart enough or capable enough? I've never managed anything more complicated than my own household budget." "Are you kidding me?" Lisa's response was immediate and fierce. "Amanda, you've been managing a complex operation for years. You coordinate multiple job schedules, manage childcare, stretch a tiny budget to feed and clothe your family, and somehow still find time to help your kids with homework and make sure they feel loved and supported. If that's not management experience, I don't know what is." Lisa's words echoed what Helen had said at the cafe, but hearing them from her longtime friend gave them additional weight. Amanda had been so focused on what she lacked: formal education, business training, professional experience, that she had failed to recognize the skills she had developed through necessity. "Think about it this way," Lisa continued. "You already understand the customers this store is meant to serve because you are one of those customers. You know what it feels like to worry about every dollar, to be judged for your financial situation, to need dignity and respect just as much as affordable groceries. That's knowledge you can't get from a textbook." After talking with Lisa for another hour, Amanda felt some of her anxiety begin to transform into excitement. The more she thought about Helen's vision for the store, the more she could imagine herself creating the kind of shopping experience she had always wished existed. She could see herself training staff to treat every customer with kindness, implementing policies that made healthy food accessible to all families, building something that would truly serve the community. But she knew she needed more perspective before making such a monumental decision. The next morning, after dropping Tommy at school and arranging for Mrs. Patterson to watch Sophia, Amanda took the bus across town to visit her mother. Carmen Rodriguez lived in the small house where Amanda had grown up, a modest two-bedroom home that had somehow accommodated a family of 7 through careful organization and endless creativity. The house was neat and comfortable, filled with photographs of children and grandchildren and the lingering aromas of Carmen's legendary cooking. Amanda found her mother in the back garden, tending to the vegetable plot that had supplemented the family's grocery budget for decades. Carmen looked up as Amanda approached, immediately noting the tension in her daughter's face. "Mija, what's wrong? Are the children sick again?" Amanda settled onto the wooden bench her father had built years before his death, watching as Carmen continued to work among the tomato plants and pepper bushes. "Mama, something incredible has happened, and I don't know what to do about it." She told Carmen the entire story, from the humiliation at Freshmart to Helen's revelation, to the job offer that seemed to promise everything Amanda had ever wanted for her family. Carmen listened without interruption, her weathered hands never stopping their careful work among the plants. When Amanda finished, Carmen sat down beside her daughter on the bench, her expression thoughtful and serious. "Tell me what scares you most about this opportunity." Failing, Amanda admitted immediately. What if I take this job and I'm terrible at it? What if I let Helen down? Or worse, what if I make decisions that hurt the families the store is supposed to help? I could lose everything, and then where would Tommy and Sophia be? Carmen nodded slowly, understanding the depth of her daughter's fear. Amanda, do you remember when you were 16 and you wanted to quit school to work full-time at the department store? Amanda remembered. The family had been going through a particularly difficult financial period, and the temptation to bring in additional income had been almost overwhelming. You wouldn't let me. You said education was the one thing no one could ever take away from me. That's right. But do you remember what else I told you? Amanda searched her memory, trying to recall the specifics of a conversation that had taken place 12 years earlier. You said that sometimes the biggest risk is being too afraid to take any risk at all. Exactly. Carmen's voice was gentle, but firm. Mija, you have been playing it safe your entire adult life. You've worked hard. You've been responsible. You've taken care of your children beautifully, but when was the last time you took a chance on yourself? The question hit Amanda with unexpected force. She realized that every major decision she had made since Tommy's birth had been motivated by the need for security and stability. She had chosen jobs that were reliable rather than fulfilling, apartments that were affordable rather than comfortable, and a lifestyle that minimized risk, even when it also minimized opportunity. This woman, this Helen Carter, Carmen continued, she didn't build a business empire by being afraid of failure. She saw something in you that you need to see in yourself. You are stronger and more capable than you realize, Amanda. You have been tested by circumstances that would have broken other people, and you have not just survived, you have thrived. Carmen stood and walked to a section of the garden where she was growing herbs, picking fresh cilantro and oregano. As she spoke, I raised 5 children in this house, and I watched each of you face moments when you had to choose between what felt safe and what offered the possibility of something better. You, Mija, have always chosen safety. Maybe it's time to choose possibility. Amanda felt tears welling up in her eyes as she listened to her mother's words. Carmen had sacrificed so much for her children, working multiple jobs and stretching every dollar to ensure they had opportunities she had never had. The idea of taking a risk that could potentially provide Tommy and Sophia with advantages beyond anything Amanda had ever imagined felt both selfish and necessary. What if I fail, Mama? What if I take this opportunity and I can't handle it? Carmen returned to the bench, her arms full of fresh herbs that she would later use to prepare meals that could feed the extended family. Then you will fail, having tried something meaningful, something that could change the lives of many families. There is honor in that kind of failure, Mija. There is no honor in being too afraid to try. The conversation with her mother provided Amanda with the clarity she had been seeking. That evening, after Tommy and Sophia were asleep, she sat at her kitchen table and wrote a list of all the reasons to accept Helen's offer and all the reasons to decline it. The list of reasons to accept filled an entire page, while the reasons to decline could be summarized in a single word: fear. The next morning, Amanda called Helen Carter's office and scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. As she prepared for the conversation that would determine her family's future, Amanda felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration that reminded her of the moments before major life changes: the day Tommy was born, the day she had moved into her first apartment as a single mother, the day she had decided to stop waiting for someone else to rescue her and start rescuing herself. When Amanda arrived at the Carter Retail Enterprises offices, she was struck by the understated elegance of the building. Unlike the flashy corporate headquarters she had seen in movies, this space felt warm and welcoming, with comfortable seating areas and photographs that celebrated the company's community involvement rather than its financial success. Helen's office reflected the same values, furnished with quality pieces that were clearly chosen for comfort and functionality rather than status. The walls were covered with letters from customers, awards from community organizations, and photographs of store openings that showed Helen working alongside employees rather than posing for publicity shots. "Amanda," Helen said, rising from behind her desk with a warm smile, "I'm so glad you called. I've been hoping to hear from you." Amanda took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Ms. Carter, I've read through your business plan. I've talked with people I trust, and I've thought about this opportunity more seriously than I've ever thought about anything in my life." Helen gestured for Amanda to sit in one of the comfortable chairs near the window, then took the seat across from her rather than remaining behind her desk. It was a small gesture that spoke volumes about her leadership style and her genuine interest in Amanda's perspective. "I'm terrified," Amanda admitted. "I'm terrified of failing, of disappointing you, of making mistakes that could hurt the customers we're trying to help. But I'm also terrified of not taking this chance, of staying where I am and always wondering what might have been." Helen nodded encouragingly. "Fear is a reasonable response to a big opportunity, Amanda. I would be more concerned if you weren't scared. The question is whether you're willing to move forward despite the fear." Amanda looked out the window at the bustling street below, where people were going about their daily lives, shopping for groceries, caring for their families, making the same kinds of difficult choices she had been making for years. The thought of being able to create a business that made those choices a little easier, that treated every customer with dignity and respect, was worth almost any risk. "Yes," Amanda said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Yes, I want to accept your offer. I want to help you build something that will make a real difference in people's lives." Helen's smile was radiant with genuine joy and satisfaction. "Amanda, I couldn't be more pleased. I believe you're going to do extraordinary things with this opportunity." As they began to discuss the practical details of Amanda's new position, from start dates to training programs to the specific location where the store would be built, Amanda felt her life shifting into a new phase that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her own capabilities and potential. The scared young mother, who had been humiliated in a grocery store just days earlier, was about to become a business leader with the power to ensure that no customer would ever experience that kind of treatment again. 6 months later, Amanda Rodriguez stood in the main aisle of Community Care Market, watching as customers moved through the spacious, well-lit store with the kind of relaxed confidence that came from knowing they would be treated with respect and dignity. The store was bustling with activity on this Saturday morning, families doing their weekly shopping, elderly customers taking their time to examine products without feeling rushed, and young parents like herself navigating the aisles. With children in tow, the transformation from Amanda's cramped apartment kitchen to this modern, professionally designed space still felt surreal at times. The months between accepting Helen's offer and opening day had been a whirlwind of intensive training, store, design meetings, staff recruitment, and community outreach. Amanda had thrown herself into learning every aspect of retail management with the same determination she had once applied to stretching her grocery budget. Helen had been true to her word about providing comprehensive support during the transition. Amanda had spent weeks at the corporate headquarters, working alongside experienced managers and learning everything from inventory management to customer service protocols. The training had been challenging, but never overwhelming, designed to build on the natural empathy and problem-solving skills that Amanda already possessed. The community care market concept had come to life in ways that exceeded even Helen's original vision, The store featured a dedicated section for fresh, locally sourced produce at subsidized prices, ensuring that healthy food was accessible to all families, regardless of income. There was a community kitchen where customers could attend free cooking classes and nutrition workshops. The payment plan system allowed families to purchase groceries with manageable monthly payments, removing the stress of having to pay everything up front. Amanda had insisted on several features that reflected her own experiences as a struggling parent. There was a children's play area where kids could stay entertained while their parents shopped without worry. The store offered free childcare during the cooking classes, recognizing that many parents couldn't afford babysitters for educational activities. Most importantly, every staff member had been trained to treat every customer with the same respect and courtesy, regardless of their payment method or the size of their purchase. The hiring process had been one of Amanda's first major challenges as a manager. She had worked closely with Helen to identify candidates who shared their commitment to community service, but she had also insisted on hiring several people who, like herself, understood financial struggle from personal experience. The result was a staff that could relate to their customers' challenges while maintaining the professionalism necessary to run an efficient operation. Maria Santos, the assistant manager Amanda had hired, was a former single mother who had returned to the workforce after her children entered school. Her bilingual skills and deep understanding of the Latino families who made up a significant portion of the store's customer base had proven invaluable. David Kim, who managed the produce section, had immigrated to the United States with limited English and an advanced degree in agriculture that had initially gone unrecognized. His expertise in sourcing quality produce at affordable prices had helped establish relationships with local farmers that benefited both the store and the community. The most satisfying aspect of Amanda's new role was witnessing the daily interactions between staff and customers that embodied the store's values. She watched as Maria patiently explained the payment plan options to a young father who was clearly struggling to afford baby formula. She observed David helping an elderly woman select the ripest fruit while sharing tips about proper storage to maximize freshness. These moments reminded Amanda why she had been willing to take such a significant risk to be part of Helen's vision. The store's impact on the community had been immediate and profound. Families who had previously had to choose between paying bills and buying nutritious food could now afford both. Children were eating more fresh fruits and vegetables because their parents could finally afford them. The cooking classes had become so popular that Amanda had to add additional sessions to accommodate demand, with many participants forming lasting friendships and support networks. One of the most meaningful changes Amanda had witnessed was in her own children. Tommy and Sophia were thriving in ways that went beyond their improved financial circumstances. They took pride in their mother's professional success, often telling their friends about the store she managed and the families it helped. Tommy had become interested in business and frequently asked Amanda questions about inventory and customer service. Sophia enjoyed visiting the store's children's area and had befriended several other kids whose families shopped there regularly. The success of Community Care Market had not gone unnoticed in the broader retail industry. Amanda had been invited to speak at conferences about innovative approaches to customer service and community engagement. These speaking opportunities had initially terrified her, but she had discovered that her authentic passion for the store's mission resonated with audiences in ways that polished corporate presentations often failed to achieve. Helen Carter remained a constant presence and mentor, visiting the store regularly and maintaining the same unannounced shopping trips that had led to their initial encounter. Their relationship had evolved from employer and employee to genuine partnership, with Helen frequently seeking Amanda's input on new initiatives and expansion plans. The success of Community Care Market had convinced Helen to develop similar stores in other communities, with Amanda playing a key role in training managers and developing operational protocols. The ripple effects of the store's success extended far beyond retail. Local food banks reported increased donations as Community Care Market redirected perfectly good produce that would have otherwise been discarded. The cooking classes had evolved into a broader community wellness program that included nutrition counseling and support groups for families facing financial challenges. The store had become a hub for community activity, hosting everything from job fairs to children's reading programs. As Amanda walked through the store on this busy Saturday morning, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The humiliation she'd experienced at Freshmart felt like something that had happened to a different person, though she knew that experience would always inform her approach to customer service. The fear and self-doubt that had nearly prevented her from accepting Helen's offer seemed almost incomprehensible now, though she understood that taking the risk had required every ounce of courage she possessed. The old Freshmart had undergone its own transformation following Helen's intervention. Derek Williams was no longer employed there, having been terminated after a thorough investigation revealed a pattern of inappropriate behavior toward customers. The new management had implemented comprehensive customer service training and policies that reflected the values Helen expected from all stores in her network. Amanda occasionally shopped there when convenience required it, and she was pleased to see that the staff now treated all customers with the respect and dignity everyone deserved. Tommy and Sophia had adapted to their changed circumstances with the resilience that children often display when their basic needs are met and their future seems secure. Tommy was excelling in school and had joined the debate team, displaying the same intellectual curiosity that Amanda had always encouraged despite their financial limitations. Sophia was thriving in a high-quality daycare program and had developed a love of reading that kept her constantly checking out new books from the library. Their new apartment was spacious enough for each child to have their own bedroom, and there was even a small yard where they could play safely. Amanda had been able to furnish it gradually with quality pieces rather than the second-hand items. That had previously been their only option. More importantly, she no longer had to worry constantly about money, which had freed her mental and emotional energy to focus on her children's development and her own personal growth. The financial security that came with her position at Community Care Market had allowed Amanda to consider possibilities that had previously been unimaginable. She had enrolled in evening business classes at the local community college, working toward the formal education that would complement her practical experience. Helen had been enthusiastic about supporting Amanda's educational goals, understanding that her increased knowledge would benefit both the store and any future expansion of the Community Care Market concept. As Amanda completed her morning walkthrough of the store, she encountered Mrs. Patterson, her former neighbor who had been so generous with childcare during Amanda's most difficult period. Mrs. Patterson was examining the selection of fresh herbs. In the produce section, her face bright with the kind of contentment that came from being able to shop without financial stress. "Amanda, dear," Mrs. Patterson said warmly, "I still can't get over how wonderful this place is. The prices, the quality, the way everyone treats you like family, it's exactly what this community needed." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson," Amanda replied, meaning it deeply. "You know, none of this would have been possible without people like you who supported me when I needed it most. The kindness you showed Tommy and Sophia during those difficult times meant everything to our family." Mrs. Patterson waved away the gratitude with characteristic modesty, but Amanda could see that the acknowledgement meant something to her. The community that had supported Amanda during her struggles was now benefiting from her success, creating a positive cycle that strengthened the entire neighborhood. The afternoon brought a visit from Helen Carter, who arrived without fanfare and began her usual unannounced tour of the store. Amanda watched from a distance as Helen observed customer interactions, noting the efficiency of the checkout process and the effectiveness of the store's layout. These visits always made Amanda slightly nervous, but they also provided valuable feedback and demonstrated Helen's ongoing commitment to maintaining the highest standards. When Helen completed her tour, she joined Amanda in the small office, space above the main floor. The office was functional but comfortable, decorated with photographs of the store's opening day and letters from satisfied customers. Amanda had made it a practice to display community feedback prominently, both as motivation for herself and as evidence of the store's positive impact. "Amanda," Helen said, settling into the chair across from Amanda's desk, "I continue to be impressed by what you've accomplished here. The store is exceeding all of our projections, but more importantly, it's clearly making a real difference in people's lives." "It feels incredible to be part of something so meaningful," Amanda replied. "Honestly, every day I see families who are able to shop with dignity, who can afford healthy food for their children, who don't have to choose between necessities. It's everything I hoped it would be and more." Helen's expression grew thoughtful as she looked out the office window at the busy store below. "Amanda, I want to discuss something with you. The success of Community Care Market has generated significant interest from communities throughout the region. I've received inquiries from mayors, community leaders, and social service organizations about developing similar stores in their areas." Amanda felt a familiar flutter of excitement mixed with apprehension. She had suspected that Helen might want to expand the concept, but hearing it stated directly made the possibility feel immediate and real. "I'd like you to consider taking on a regional role," Helen continued, "overseeing the development of additional community care markets while maintaining your connection to this store. It would mean more responsibility, more travel, and the challenge of replicating what you've built here in very different communities." The offer represented another significant leap, similar to the one Amanda had taken when she first accepted Helen's proposition. But this time, Amanda felt more confident in her abilities and more certain of her capacity to handle increased responsibility. The months of managing Community Care Market had proven to herself that she could succeed in roles she had never imagined occupying. "I'm interested," Amanda said, her voice steady and confident. "This store has shown me what's possible when you combine good business practices with genuine care for the community. If we can replicate that impact in other places, I think we have an obligation to try." Helen's smile reflected both satisfaction and pride in Amanda's growth. "I was hoping you'd say that. We'll start slowly, perhaps with one additional location, and build from there. You'll have full support and resources, just as you did when we opened this store." As their meeting concluded and Helen prepared to leave, Amanda reflected on how much her relationship with risk and opportunity had changed. The woman who had once been paralyzed by fear of failure was now actively seeking new challenges and expanded responsibilities. The transformation wasn't just professional, but personal, affecting every aspect of how she approached problems and possibilities. That evening, as Amanda walked home through the familiar streets of Riverside, she passed the building that had housed the old Fresh Mart. The space was now occupied by a small family restaurant, and she could see through the windows that it was busy with weekend diners. The sight reminded her of how much the entire community had changed and grown, partly as a result of the economic activity generated by Community Care Market. At home, Tommy and Sophia were working on homework at the kitchen table that had once been the site of Amanda's most difficult budgeting sessions. Now, instead of counting coins and calculating minimum purchases, the table was covered with books, art supplies, and the comfortable detritus of children who had time and space to pursue their interests. "How was the store today, Mama?" Sophia asked, looking up from a drawing she was creating with the expensive colored pencils Amanda could now afford to buy. Busy and wonderful, Amanda replied, kissing the top of Sophia's head. We helped a lot of families get the food they need, and I got to work with people I really care about. Tommy glanced up from his math homework. Are you going to open more stores like ours? Maybe, Amanda said, impressed as always by her son's perceptiveness. Would you like that? I think other kids should have what we have, Tommy said. Seriously, it's not fair that some families have to worry about buying food. Amanda felt a surge of pride in her son's developing sense of justice and compassion. The values she had tried to instill in her children during their most difficult times had taken root and were flourishing now that they had the security to think beyond their immediate needs. As she helped the children with their homework and prepared dinner in the kitchen that no longer echoed with financial anxiety, Amanda thought about the circular nature of her journey. She had started as a customer who needed dignity and respect during difficult times. She had become a manager, dedicated to providing that dignity and respect to others. Now she was being offered the opportunity to expand that mission to additional communities, creating a network of stores that prioritized people over profit. The phone rang as they were finishing dinner, and Amanda was pleased to hear Lisa's voice on the other end. Her friendship with Lisa had deepened as Amanda's circumstances improved, no longer shadowed by the stress and shame that had once made it difficult for Amanda to fully enjoy social connections. I heard through the grapevine that you might be expanding to other cities, Lisa said without preamble. Please tell me it's true. It's still in the early stages, Amanda replied. But yes, Helen wants me to help develop additional community care markets. It's exciting and terrifying in equal measure. You know what I love about this, Lisa said. 2 years ago, you were afraid to spend an extra $1 on groceries. Now you're planning to revolutionize retail in multiple cities. The growth has been incredible to watch. The conversation with Lisa reminded Amanda of how much support she had received throughout her journey, from friends like Lisa and family like her mother, to community members like Mrs. Patterson and professional mentors like Helen. The success of Community Care Market wasn't just her achievement, but the result of many people believing in her potential and helping her realize it. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Amanda sat on the small balcony of their new apartment and looked out over the lights of Riverside. The town looked the same as it always had, but she knew that dozens of families were sleeping, more peacefully because they no longer had to choose between paying bills and feeding their children. Children were going to bed with full stomachs, and parents were resting easier, knowing that healthy food was accessible and affordable. The grocery store that had once been the site of her greatest humiliation had become the foundation for her greatest triumph. More than that, it had become proof that individual actions, guided by compassion and supported by resources, could create systemic change that benefited entire communities. Amanda thought about Derek Williams and wondered if he had learned anything from the consequences of his actions. She hoped he had found employment somewhere that allowed him to grow and develop better relationships with the people he served. The anger she had once felt toward him had long since been replaced by a determination to ensure that his behavior would never be tolerated in any business she had the power to influence. As she prepared for bed, Amanda felt the deep satisfaction that came from knowing she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing work that aligned with her values and made a meaningful difference in the world. The scared young mother who had been thrown out of a grocery store had become a confident business leader whose decisions affected hundreds of families. The transformation seemed impossible in retrospect, but it had happened one day, one decision, one act of courage at a time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to serve the community that had supported her through her most difficult times. Amanda Rodriguez was ready for whatever came next, armed with experience, confidence, and the unshakable knowledge that treating people with dignity and respect wasn't just good business, it was the foundation for building a better world. Up. Next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.